May I have your attention, please? Sorry for the confusion on a little bit of the time issue. However, we hope that you were able to get a snack, and we're going to go back now and resume with our next speaker so that we can get back on schedule. So it's my honor to introduce to you James Mayfield. And James is a historian and private researcher, and his emphasis is on ethnic demographics and ethnic conflict. And he's going to be our next speaker. So may I present to you James Mayfield.
Good afternoon, or guten Tag an die deutschen Zuhörer. To begin, I'd like to thank Ann Morrison for organizing this event and inviting me here from California to speak today. I'd also like to thank the scholars, survivors, and students gathered here working to bring awareness to the story of these 10 to 15 million displaced civilians. My name is James Mayfield, and I'm a historian from California State University, Fullerton, and the director of an academic organization called the Institute for Research of Expelled Germans, located at expelledgermans.org. Today I'm going to speak on the history, expulsion, and forced labor of the Volga German community of the former Soviet Union, and lastly, their present cultural disillusionment between assimilation and emigration in modern Russia, Kazakhstan, and Germany. The first phase of large-scale foreign immigration into Russia began in the 18th century under the administration of Catherine the Great, who ruled from 1762 to 1796. Herself of ethnic German origin, Catherine helped spearhead the agricultural and economic modernization of the massive Russian Empire by subsidizing the settlement of foreign farmers, artisans, intellectuals, and entrepreneurs from Western Europe, especially the states of Germany. These guest laborers were promised religious freedom, political autonomy, and cultural sponsorship. Exploiting the Russian invitation to develop the fertile steppe lands along the Volga River, sporadic agrarian communities, especially from the southern German states, left the Holy Roman Empire for the opportunities of the Russian frontier of Central Asia. Upon settlement, these German farmers of diverse regional origins and German dialects coalesced into one of the many autonomous ethnic German communities of the Russian Empire and became known as the Volga Germans, or the Volga Deutsche. Here, they would remain separated from the political evolution of Germany for over 200 years, until their total removal by Joseph Stalin, having been falsely accused of surreptitious Nazi collaboration with the homeland that they had long left behind. With their geographic, cultural, and political isolation, the German minority was generally able to escape the social turmoil, famines, and political atomization faced by the Russian majority. By 1860, there were at least 216,000 Volga Germans in Russia. And by 1897, this had almost doubled to as many as 345,000 in less than 20 years. These auspicious opportunities were sustained by continued immigration from Germany. The largely placid history of the Volga German community changed with the collapse of the Russian Empire and the establishment of the Soviet Union by Vladimir Lenin after 1917. The effects of the revolution on the German minority were both tremendously negative and admittedly quite positive. The collectivization programs and redistribution of property forever destroyed the 200-year-old traditional pasture lifestyle and independence of the German farmers. In the interest of socialist liberation and re-education, German families were removed from their homes en masse and force-marched to the distant collective farms and coerced into forced labor. Improvident Soviet agricultural policies unintentionally created rampant famines and mass starvation, accidentally inflicting the death of as many as 5 million Ukrainians and as much as 1/3 of the total population of Kazakhstan. The total Volga German population may have fallen by as much as 10 to 20% as a direct result of Soviet collectivization. At the height of the starvation, the Soviets even further confiscated as much as 42% of the few remaining crops from Volga German families, reducing many Germans to even surviving by eating dogs, insects, and even rats. At the same time, the religious institutions were banned as regressive and subversive. At least 38,000 Volga Germans were arrested or shot during Stalin's so-called Great Terror of the 1930s as alleged political enemies. Despite these brutal calamities against ethnic German civilians, the The Volga German identity concomitantly enjoyed great cultural and political protection under Lenin's orchestration. True to his policy of promoting ethnic diversity in a united struggle for workers' liberation, Lenin created the Volga German Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic by 1924, or the Volga German Republic. German was declared a second official language alongside Russian, although its use was strongly discouraged. Local community interests of the Volga Germans were represented by communist political officials for the first time. The Volga Germans' religious beliefs, nonetheless, so central to their distinct culture, were replaced by strict indoctrination and education according to Marxist-Leninist ideology as ostensibly equal citizens of the collective Soviet Union. The 200-year-old Volga German capital of Kazakhstan, which is here, was renamed Engels after the second advocate of early Marxism. So too, concerned over the ethnic homogeneity and xenophobia and questionable loyalty of the Volga Germans, non-German minorities were forcibly brought into the Volga German Republic, especially Russians, Ukrainians, Jews, and Kazakhs. The Volga German Republic had a population of roughly 600,000, including non-Germans at its height, and only 60.5% thereof were ethnic Germans by the time of their complete expulsion. The relatively passive coexistence rapidly tumbled into disaster for the 200-year-old Volga German community with the invasion of the Soviet Union by the very distant Nazi Germany on June 22, 1941. Always willing to endure any human catastrophe necessary for the triumph of the Soviet vision, Joseph Stalin determined to resolve the potential risk of internal collaboration by universally determining that all ethnic Germans in the Soviet Union were criminal and subversive, despite the fact that they had not been connected in any way to Germany for nearly 200 years and had not even seen the reunification of Germany in 1871. Soviet censorship meant that the Volga Germans did not even have an outlet through which to be exposed to any subversive, pan-Germanist, racist, or Nazi ideologies that would warrant their removal. Even Otto von Bismarck, the great reunifier of Germany, had dismissed the Volga Germans as being too culturally adulterated and distanced from their homeland to be viable as international agents of the German nation. But for Stalin, on the other hand, ethnicity and language alone were enough to instantly transform all Volga German civilians into petty criminals. Perhaps most importantly of all, Stalin had actually predicted a future conflict with Hitler's Germany and had begun the precautionary expulsions of the Volga Germans a year before the Nazi invasion, when the USSR was actually in a state of friendship with Nazi Germany. Please turn off your phones. The vast majority of Volga Germans were not even given a chance to perform treason, participate in any genocide or death squads, or collaborate with the Nazis before they were arrested and expelled. Unlike other German minorities, for example, in Yugoslavia and Romania, which large segments of which cooperated with the Nazis and even joined death squads, these were not the case. They did not even have a chance to do that. Soviet Order 7161 decreed that, virtually without special exception, all persons of German ethnic identity, regardless of their political beliefs, were to be forcibly removed from their homes, packed into trains, and shipped hundreds and often even thousands of miles away to the wastelands of the very distant Kazakhstan and Siberia, where they would be required to perform forced labor. A government order announced that, quote, in order to forestall undesirable conflicts and consequences and to avoid bloodshed, the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet has found it necessary to resettle the entire German population, unquote. The entirety of more than 400,000 Volga German civilians were to join 700,000 other ethnic Germans expelled from the rest of the Soviet Union to be shipped to the freezing wastelands of Central Asia. In total, the Soviets succeeded in expelling at least 82% of the USSR's 1,084,828 ethnic Germans by the time of Stalin's death. The German minority, however, was not even anywhere near hit the hardest. Every single one of more than 500,000 Ingush and Chechen Muslims from Chechnya and southern Russia were expelled alongside the Germans, and every single one of the 185,000 Crimean Tatar Muslims of southern Ukraine were shipped along with the Germans to the same place. Other minority groups, like the Finnish Karelians, Meskhetian Turks, Buddhist Kalmyks, Koreans, and Poles, an endless amount of people,